You've found nightfall murmurs. When day fades into silence, the world begins to whisper. Some stories come as murmurs, some as warnings, but they all come at night. Don't be afraid to listen, but never listen alone. The memory remains indelible. The first time my own name, Elias, slithered down that tenebrous hallway to find me. Huddled in my office alcove, I was, adrift in oceans of figures, striving to muffle the building's ancient sighs and groans, the plumbing's lament. 9 o'clock had chimed invisibly. Colleagues had long since fled the fluorescent hum, leaving me cocooned in a silence broken only by the stuttering dance of the overhead lights. Then, Elias, a whisper, sharp and corroded, like fingernails dragged across tin, seeming to emanate from just beyond my doorframe. Every muscle coiled. A strange galvanic energy surged through my chest. Rising, I navigated the short distance to the threshold. The corridor beyond lay in chiaroscuro, a patchwork born of the energy-saving nocturnal protocol, its far reaches dissolving into shadow. I craned my neck, listening intently into the void. Nothing but the building settling. Fatigue, I reasoned. The late hour, the screen's relentless glare. Retreating to my desk, I hadn't resettled before it came again, louder this time. Elias, articulated by a voice that sounded fractured, fundamentally broken. Back into the hallway, I stepped, drawn by the sound originating near the elevator bank at the corridor's terminus. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A clammy sheen slicked my back. Slowly I advanced, my gaze sweeping the familiar geometry of floor tiles, painted walls, numbered doors. Everything held its place, yet the intermittent darkness lent the passage an alien quality. Reaching the far end, I confronted an impossibility: a door. Positioned on the left, near the final office suite, it was a stark, unadorned plane of metal, devoid of signage or number. A phantom chill emanated from it. I knew this hallway intimately, its every dimension charted in the architectural enthusiast's corner of my mind. This door had no right to exist. The space it occupied abutted the building's external skin, yet here it stood, promising entry into... what? A knot tightened in my gut. My throat felt parched, constricted. My hand reached for the handle, braced for resistance. It yielded effortlessly, the hinges emitting a barely audible sigh. Pulling it open, a mere hand breadth, released a wave of frigid air against my face. Beyond the threshold lay absolute blackness. No hint of furniture, no discernible walls, like peering into the maw of some vast, lightless hangar, crammed impossibly into the building's structure. My mental blueprint screamed contradiction. There was no volume behind that wall, only the 7th floor drop to the street. This portal, however, opened onto perceived immensity. The air within felt heavy, stagnant, redolent of long, undisturbed stillness. Hesitation held me captive. A shiver traced my spine, a primal urge to slam the panel shut and flee, battling a potent, magnetic curiosity. One tentative step across the threshold. The floor felt solid beneath my shoe, yet the darkness was profound, the corridor's dim spill barely illuminating the immediate vicinity. The temperature plunged further, a peculiar pressure clamped down on my ears, the sensation of a hermetically sealed chamber. My heart galloped. Another step. Elias. Right behind me, the voice hissed, though the air remained undisturbed. My legs trembled, instinct screaming for retreat. I backed away, fingers still clasped around the cold knob, until the familiar, dimly lit corridor surrounded me once more. I wrenched the door closed, turned, and sprinted back to the office, snatching my belongings, locking the door with fumbling hands, escaping the building with desperate haste. Sleep offered little refuge that night. My thoughts snagged on the memory of that grating summons, the phantom chill on my skin. The following workday was a blur of feigned concentration, the mystery of the door eclipsing every task. At midday, amidst the comforting bustle of colleagues, I walked the length of the corridor. The wall stood uninterrupted, smooth plaster, regulation grey baseboard, nothing. I lingered, scrutinizing the spot, before turning away. A resolve formed. I would stay late again. Fabricating a demanding project, I deflected the good-natured jibes about workaholism, a knot of apprehension tightening with the descending dusk. By 7, the floor was thinning out. By 8, only myself and the distant clatter of the janitorial crew remained. By 9, solitude reigned, and the hallway lights began their selective dimming. Ensconced in my office, lights blazing defiantly, I listened. The building breathed silence. Then, around 9:30, it returned. Elias, that same corrosive whisper. My scalp prickled. Shoving my chair back, I rose and ventured into the corridor, now a landscape reshaped by shadow. Towards the far end, it waited, the identical featureless slab of metal. My pulse throbbed erratically. Sweat beaded on my palms. Each footfall felt deliberate, heavy, as I traversed the distance. Reaching out, my fingers brushed the handle, registering its profound coldness and, disturbingly, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration. A low hum resonating through the steel. I swung it open, the blast of cold air, the impenetrable darkness within, just as before, an impossible chamber where none should be. This time, preparedness was my shield. A flashlight, its beam sliced into the void, illuminating a narrow path across a smooth concrete floor. Stepping inside, I swept the light, searching for boundaries, walls. The space felt vaster than the building's entire footprint. A few paces in, the air grew denser, my breathing becoming shallow, a tightness constricting my chest. Behind me, the distinct sound of the door clicking shut. Startled, I spun, the flashlight beam finding the faint outline of the portal, closed now. Hurrying back, I twisted the knob. Relief surged as it opened readily. I wasn't trapped. A glance over my shoulder into the Stygian depths. Elias echoed again, seemingly closer now. My heart fluttered like a snared bird. Uncertainty paralyzed me. An experiment beckoned. I stepped out, closed the door firmly, and returned to my office sanctuary. After several minutes of forced calm, I re-entered the hallway. The door remained, solid and implacable. I repeated this ritual several times. Open the door, probe the void with light, hear the distant, ragged call, retreat, close it, attempt composure at my desk. The voice never manifested unless I was within the threshold. Each utterance sent a jolt through me, tightening my throat, accelerating my pulse. My grip on sanity felt tenuous. Could it be an elaborate prank? Yet the physics defied explanation. The 7th floor, the exterior wall, behind that partition lay only empty air, a sheer drop. This room, this warehouse-sized expanse, was a spatial paradox. The following nights became a pattern of reluctant fascination. Drawn back despite my fear, I sought understanding. I tested its parameters. A chalk mark made on the wall during daylight hours vanished without a trace. Come nightfall, the door materialized precisely where the mark had been. Attempting to wedge it open proved futile. Returning after a brief absence, I'd invariably find it shut, though I never witnessed the act of closing. One evening, I set my phone to record video, propped strategically in the corridor, lens aimed at the wall's critical section. Hiding in my darkened office, I waited. Around 9:30, the summons came. Elias. I retrieved the phone hastily. The corridor was dim, the door present. Reviewing the footage revealed the mundane hallway, empty and still, until the timestamp neared 9:30. Then, a fractional glitch, a flicker in the digital stream. In the very next frame, the door simply was. Materialized instantly, transitioning from blank wall to closed metal slab without intermediate state. Witnessing this, my hands began to shake, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't hallucination. It was real. Armed with this chilling proof, I resolved to film inside. That night, camera rolling, I stepped across the threshold again. Flashlight and lens pointed downward, capturing the concrete floor. The air felt oppressively heavy, my temples throbbing. Elias reverberated from the unseen distance ahead, the sound more elongated now, as if stretched across miles. Following the call, flashlight beam cutting a lonely swath, I advanced. Nothing visible, only soft, dragging sounds, like cloth-shod feet shuffling across the concrete. My own breath plumed visibly in the beam, testament to the unnatural cold. My feet grew numb, fingers stiffening around the flashlight's grip. Perhaps 50 paces I walked, enveloped in darkness save for that solitary cone of light. The deeper I ventured, the more palpable a weight seemed to press upon my shoulders. Abruptly, nerve failed. My stomach churned. Tension locked my shoulders. Every instinct shrieked retreat. Turning, my heart leaped. The doorway's light was gone. Panic flared. Then, a faint glimmer, a sliver of hope. I hurried back, and just as I neared, the distinct thump of the door, slamming shut, echoed in the void. Yet I reached it, twisted the knob, and stumbled back into the hallway, gasping, drenched in cold sweat. The footage, reviewed later, showed little more than a jittery perspective of the concrete floor. The audio captured the scraping noises, a faint sibilance like wind, but offered no source. The space appeared utterly barren. The recorded voice was a pale imitation of the live experience. Faint, distorted, barely perceptible. No figures, no shapes, only darkness. Sleep became a luxury. Appetite dwindled. Daytime hours were spent in anxious anticipation, counting down to nightfall. Part of me craved cessation, an end to this nightly ritual. Another, darker part, felt an insatiable need to understand, an itch demanding to be scratched. Subtle changes began to permeate my waking hours. The corridor near that specific spot felt persistently cooler, even under the midday sun. A casual query to a colleague about a draft yielded only a shrug. Touching the wall where the door manifested confirmed it. The plaster felt unnaturally chilled, like the skin of a morgue drawer. My journal chronicled its appearances, always between 9 and 10 p.m., always present until I departed the building, presumably vanishing shortly thereafter. An attempt to outwait it, hidden in a supply closet across the hall, ended near 11. Exhaustion and raw nerves drove me out. The door was still there. Courage depleted, I fled. One night, resolve hardened. Enough. I would not open the door. I immersed myself in work, praying the voice would remain silent. At 9:15, it came. Elias, that metallic rasp. My knuckles whitened as I gripped the desk edge. Ignore it. Force concentration. It called again and again. I felt my pulse hammering in my throat. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Squeezing my eyes shut, I focused on the drone of the HVAC system. The voice sounded closer now. A breath of icy air brushed the nape of my neck, as if something stood directly behind me. The hairs on my arms prickled upright. After a long minute, silence fell. I exhaled, tension easing slightly. Then, insidious curiosity returned. It had never sounded so near before, as if positioned right outside my office door. I stood, legs unsteady. Emerging into the corridor, I found it steeped in its usual nocturnal gloom. The door was there, but this time it was slightly ajar, a sliver of absolute black visible, leaking cold. I stepped forward, hesitated, then approached with slow, deliberate steps. The hinges groaned as I nudged it wider. My flashlight remained on my desk tonight. The ambient hallway light offered scant penetration. I could see perhaps 2 feet into the oppressive dark. A wave of visceral dread washed through me, my body screaming warnings. Elias echoed from within, but altered, doubled, as if 2 voices spoke in discordant unison. Adrenaline flooded my system. My hands trembled violently. Breath came in short, shallow gasps. The air inside felt heavier, more suffocating than ever before. I took 1 step back, then another, pulled the door shut, turned, and walked directly to the elevators. I haven't opened that door again, yet its presence lingers. Every night I remain past 9, it materializes. Sometimes its reflection gleams faintly on the polished floor, visible from my office window. Sometimes the voice whispers my name, a scratching at the periphery of hearing, almost lost in the building's mechanical size. Sometimes I feel that frigid touch on my shoulder and spin around to find only empty air. I leave early now, religiously. My manager's dissatisfaction with my reduced hours is a small price to pay. Avoidance is my strategy. Avoid that corridor after dark. If I must traverse it, head down, pace quickened. Descending in the elevator, I occasionally feel a phantom draft at my collar, as if the chill itself pursues me. I strive to ignore it. How long can this equilibrium hold? Transferring, finding a new position. These thoughts surface, yet economic realities anchor me. I cling to the belief that punctuality is my shield. Still, each evening as I gather my belongings, the familiar tension returns. My hands shake slightly. Is it waiting just around the bend? Sometimes, exiting, I see the corridor empty, the wall seamless, yet the air near that spot feels colder, charged with a silent, watchful presence. There is no neat conclusion to this account, no tidy explanation. It is an ongoing state of being. The door persists, the voice calls, my avoidance continues. I will not enter again. That place, that cold, empty, suffocating non-space, does not belong to our world. The mere thought of crossing its threshold sends ripples of fear across my skin. So I log off early. I retrieve my keys. I pretend the hallway is just a hallway. I ride the elevator, nod to the guard, step onto the street. The city air, even cool, feels warmer. kinder than the breath of that place. Dreams offer no escape. The metal door features nightly, eternally ajar, revealing the darkness beyond. I wake with a hammering heart, stare at the glowing numerals of the clock, 3:00 a.m., and reassure myself, my apartment, safety. Then comes the sinking realization. Tomorrow necessitates return to the same building, the same corridors, the same stretch of wall that may, after dark, cease to be a wall at all. This is my narrative, unfinished. I only know that some nights Elias scrapes against my hearing, and down the hall the impossible door awaits. Beyond it, something waits in the cold. Should you ever find yourself alone in the twilight hours of an old building and hear your name whispered from the shadows, do yourself a profound kindness. Lock up. Go home. Erase the sound from your memory, because some doors, once opened, redefine the boundaries of your world of The memory clings, sharp and unwelcome, of the collector's emporium where impulse, masquerading as appreciation, first drew my eye to that monochrome photograph. It resided in an unassuming timber frame perched on a diminutive display stand, tucked away near the room's shadowed periphery. The image captured a substantial house, defined by lofty windows and a veranda that swept around its facade. Though the surrounding lawn appeared meticulously groomed, the photograph itself was wanting in clarity, a composition steeped in gloom, slightly softened by time or technique. Yet an inexplicable magnetism seized me. I surrendered to it without question, my hand ascending, securing the piece with the final bid. I departed that auction house, the framed image nestled beneath my arm, flush with the conviction of having unearthed a singular treasure. Now I curse that fateful acquisition. 3 days passed before I designated a space for it upon my living room wall, a specific alcove near the corner window. The frame, venerable though it was, possessed a small clasp on its verso, facilitating its suspension from a robust nail. Stepping back, I surveyed my handiwork. In that moment, the edifice depicted struck me merely as an anonymous mansion from a bygone era. I idly speculated on its potential survival somewhere in the world, but the initial, undeniable impression upon securing it was one of subtle disquiet. The windows gaped, dark and vacant as hollowed sockets. The primary doors stood resolutely sealed, the porch projecting an air of profound desertion. Life, it seemed, had utterly absconded from the scene. The inaugural night passed without incident. Exhaustion from a protracted workday claimed me, and I afforded the photograph scarcely a glance before succumbing to sleep. Dawn arrived, and with my morning coffee, I ambled into the living room. My gaze fell upon the image, and I faltered. Something felt altered. Drawing nearer, I discerned a nebulous glow emanating from behind a window on the upper story. A soft, spectral luminescence, akin to a distant lamp, ignited within. I could have sworn its absence the day prior. I lingered, rubbing my eyes, constructing facile explanations about initial inattention. This became my shield against the burgeoning unease. Finishing my coffee, I departed for the office. Returning late the subsequent evening, I found the apartment steeped in silence. My bag dropped onto the sofa. My attention immediately sought the photograph. Now illumination bloomed in 2 upper windows, while the lower casements seemed to possess a newfound definition. Within their panes, faint geometries suggested furniture, perhaps even silhouettes. A strange, prickling current traced my spine. My chest constricted. Logic screamed the impossibility. A static print could not transmute. I forced slow, deliberate breaths, scrutinizing the image, desperately seeking an optical trick born of lamplight reflecting on glass. Extinguishing the lamp yielded no change. The internal glow persisted, unwavering in the manufactured twilight. I stood rooted in the dimness, eyes locked onto that monochromatic tableau, the inexplicable tightening its grip. My fingers traced the smooth, cool glass, searching for paint, smudges, any physical anomaly. Nothing. It remained the same photograph, yet undeniably, elementally different, sense fractured. Thereafter, obsession took root. Days spent immersed in spreadsheets and correspondence were punctuated by intrusive replays of the Shiftung image. Each evening became a hurried pilgrimage home, driven by the morbid curiosity to witness the latest transformation, and change it always did. One night, the porch boards appeared sharper, as if freshly painted. Another time, a side door, previously unseen, gaped slightly ajar, revealing only impenetrable shadow within. Then came the figures, nebulous shapes materializing on the lawn. Not distinct, more akin to solidified shadows, yet possessing the faint contours of limbs and torsos. The longer I stared, the more tangible their presence felt. My throat would parch, a hollowness blooming in my stomach. Music, television, calls to friends. All distractions proved futile, my gaze invariably drifting back to the photograph on the wall. One evening, I invited Leo over for dinner, deliberately withholding mention of the photograph. I craved external validation, or perhaps dismissal. Post-meal, we settled in the living room. He recounted workplace anecdotes. I feigned attention, my focus surreptitiously tracking his gaze. Mid-sentence, he paused, his brow furrowing as he squinted towards the wall. He rose, approached the frame, leaning in for a closer inspection. "Where'd you get this peculiar thing, Elias?" he murmured, his tone laced with puzzlement. I merely nodded, expectant. He seemed baffled by the phantoms in the windows, querying if it were some novel artwork designed to morph under varying light. Confusion etched his features. A surge of relief washed over me. I wasn't hallucinating, but this solace evaporated instantly, replaced by the chilling certainty that the phenomenon was real. I recounted the entire narrative, beginning with the auction. Leo listened, rapt and silent, though an undeniable unease radiated from him. He proposed taking it down, sequestering it in a closet. I agreed readily. Lifting it from the nail, I placed it face down upon the coffee table. We attempted a film, but my concentration remained tethered to the concealed image mere feet away. Leo departed eventually, leaving me to consign the photograph to a box within my storage closet. A knot of tension lingered between my shoulder blades, yet its removal from sight offered a fragile respite. Sleep, I hoped, might sever the connection. Morning found me awake before the alarm, an undeniable compulsion drawing me towards the storage room. Curiosity, I told myself, nothing more. Opening the closet, then the box, I found it undisturbed. I lifted the frame, turning it over. The house stood unchanged, but the shadows on the lawn, they seemed larger, subtly encroaching upon the foreground. My hand trembled. I hastily returned it to the box, slamming the closet door shut before fleeing for work. Throughout the day, an uncomfortable psychic itch persisted. The pull was inexorable. Upon returning home, I retrieved the photograph from its confinement, placing it on the coffee table once more. I stared. The shadows now occupied the porch itself. Leaning closer, heart hammering against my ribs, pulse throbbing violently in my neck, I thought I could discern the faint architecture of a head, perhaps a shoulder. The obscurity prevented certainty, yet the overwhelming impression solidified. Figures inhabited the photograph. A powerful urge to destroy it warred with an equally potent, inexplicable restraint. It was a paradoxical blend of revulsion and fascination. I convinced myself of the need for systematic observation, for documentation. Retrieving a notepad, I began chronicling the changes, day by meticulous day. Wednesday, one of the porch doors now stood partially open. Thursday, a second figure manifested near the lawn's edge, draped in what resembled a long coat. Friday, a light flickered to life in the presumed foyer. The alterations accumulated, each escalating my internal dissonance. Sleep became fragmented, restless. Every mundane household sound, a floorboard creaking, pipes settling, made me recoil. My eyes constantly sought the photograph, half expecting its inhabitants to step forth into my reality. One evening, ensconced on the sofa, feigning interest in a magazine, I sought refuge from the oppressive silence of the living room, illuminated only by a solitary lamp beside my armchair. The photograph lay inert, face down on the coffee table, its gaze averted. Suddenly, a faint scraping noise emanated from the table's direction. Not loud, but distinct. A jolt, sharp and cold, shot through my chest. My skin prickled. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered the magazine, rising on legs that felt strangely disconnected. Approaching the coffee table, I observed the photograph remained in its position, but the storage box behind it had shifted inexplicably by an inch or two. I stared, bewildered. No draft permeated the room. Nothing else was disturbed. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm. My mind spun. With trembling hands, I lifted the frame, turning it over. The front door of the house in the picture now stood wide open, and poised on the threshold, clearer than any previous apparition, stood a figure. Broad shoulders, short hair, a chillingly familiar silhouette. It looked like me. My stomach plummeted. A strangled gasp escaped me, one hand flying to cover my mouth. I set the photograph down, stumbling backward. My arms shook uncontrollably. The room seemed to tilt. It was undeniably me, or an uncanny facsimile thereof, standing at the entrance to that spectral house. The sheer impossibility threatened to unravel my sanity. My eyes burned from lack of blinking. Rubbing my face fiercely, I paced the confines of the room, breath catching in short, ragged bursts. An urge to scream, to shatter the suffocating tension, welled within me. I snatched my phone, dialing Leo's number. Voicemail. I left a message, my voice quavering, simply pleading for a return call. Then, my gaze returned, magnetically, to the photograph. The figure remained static, simply standing there, facing outward. Sleep was unthinkable that night. The photograph stayed on the coffee table, face up, an object of morbid surveillance. I remained on the sofa, bathed in the glare of every light fixture I possessed. My body cried out for rest, but my mind, trapped in a loop of fear and disbelief, refused surrender. Around 2 a.m, consciousness began to fray. exhaustion pulling me under. Then, a soft tapping sound surfaced, gentle, rhythmic, like knuckles rapping lightly on glass. I jolted fully awake, scanning the room, heart pounding against my ribs. The sound, I realized with dawning horror, seemed to originate from Sord the photograph. Rising on unsteady legs, I peered closely at the frame. The glass surface appeared untouched. I tapped it tentatively with my own finger. It produced only a dull thud. The phantom tapping did not repeat, yet its echo reverberated in my memory. My palms grew slick with sweat. My t-shirt clung damply to my back. I felt utterly displaced, adrift within the familiar geography of my own living room. The following day, I reported ill to work. Functionality was beyond me, my thoughts consumed entirely by the bizarre affliction of the photograph. The morning dissolved in fruitless online research, desperately seeking any information about the image, the house, the auctioneer. Keywords like vintage mansion, haunted photograph, yielded nothing resembling the structure in my possession. Defeated, I returned to the living room. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, bathing the space in a deceptively warm glow. The photograph, however, seemed to have absorbed the ambient light, appearing darker, more ominous. The sky depicted within had undergone a transformation. It was now overcast, storm clouds gathering ominously around the roofline, a detail unequivocally absent before. My own reflection stared back from the glass, pale, gaunt. The figure resembling me, still positioned by the front door, now seemed subtly shifted, as if initiating a step from the porch onto the lawn. My chest tightened further. My hands felt numb, distant. I braced myself against the back of the sofa. The impulse to incinerate the photograph, to smash it to fragments, warred again with that primal, instinctual warning against destruction. An inexplicable certainty held that destroying the image would unleash something far worse. The changes, though gradual, almost insidious, relentlessly amplified the tension coiled within me. I found myself compelled to check the photograph hourly, obsessively tracking the progress of my doppelganger. I patrolled my own apartment, peering behind doors, scrutinizing windows, half convinced I would glimpse my double lurking outside. By late afternoon, the figure in the photograph had undeniably moved into the yard. My own face, rendered in monochrome, was now disconcertingly clear. The eyes were blank, devoid of expression, the lips slightly parted, its head tilted upward, gazing directly at the observer, at me. A suffocating constriction seized my throat. The terrifying possibility formed. It was trying to emerge. I envisioned it detaching from the paper, materializing within my living room. My pulse surged. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears. I methodically locked every door and window in the apartment. An act of futile superstition, a desperate craving for barriers against the encroaching impossible. As dusk bled into evening, I resumed my vigil on the sofa, eyes fixed on the photograph. The sky within the frame had deepened to near blackness, mimicking the encroaching night outside. Porch lights now glowed eerily, illuminating additional, indistinct shadows massing around the yard. The figure bearing my likeness stood perilously close to the lower edge of the frame, seemingly poised to transgress the picture's boundary. A tremor ran through me. I rubbed my arms, seeking warmth against an internal chill. The profound silence of the apartment pressed down, heavy and suffocating. My breathing grew shallow. My phone remained clutched in my hand, a useless talisman, Leo's silence amplifying my isolation. The clock ticked past 9. I forced myself to consume a meager meal, the food tasteless, fuel for a body bracing for an unknown ordeal. The urge to hide the photograph away battled the compulsion to watch, to bear witness. Each glance sent my heart into overdrive. Each moment I looked away, my mind conjured terrifying scenarios of its unseen progress. Hours bled away in restless pacing. Approaching midnight, I extinguished the main overhead lights, leaving only the small lamp casting long shadows. I positioned myself near the coffee table, the photograph mere inches away. The very air felt thick, charged. My shoulders remained rigid with tension. My gaze flickered constantly between the static image and the shadowed corners of my apartment, interpreting every creak of the building, every subtle shift of the floorboards, as a potential prelude. Around 1 a.m, I perceived it. The figure's foot extended halfway beyond the bottom edge of the frame. Breath hitched in my throat. Leaning forward, heart galloping, I felt sweat bead on my temple. My hands shook violently. I reached out, pressing trembling fingertips against the cool glass. It remained solid, immutable, yet the figure depicted was undeniably, impossibly, escaping its confines. I recoiled, clenching my fists, my mind flashing with the imminent horror of something appearing in my peripheral vision. I whipped my head around, scanning the darkened periphery of the room. Nothing. Only solitude and the crushing weight of fear. It is now long past midnight. I write this, seeking focus, seeking solace in articulation. The photograph sits on the table before me, facing outward. The figure is almost entirely absent from the scene now, vanished beyond the lower border. Within the frame, the yard retains its shadowy occupants. The house windows remain unnaturally lit. My pulse hammers a deafening rhythm in my ears. My mouth is parched. My eyes keep darting towards my own front door, anticipating a knock, the furtive turn of the handle. I am suspended between hypervigilance and utter terror. I can hear the frantic thrum of my own heart. My entire body is coiled, braced for impact. I am afraid that whatever entity resided within that photograph is now seeking me in my own space. I am afraid I possess no means to stop it. Exhaustion weighs heavily, yet the adrenaline of fear forbids surrender. My eyes remain fixed, alternating between the nearly empty photograph and the shadowed threshold of my home. If movement occurs, I will attempt to react, though the futility of resistance chills me. I must remain watchful. This is my current state, sitting, writing, hoping this act diminishes the profound isolation. No explanation surfaces for how a photograph can exhibit such mutable malevolence, how it can birth a duplicate of myself. I only know the reality of it, and that the duplicate has now almost completely departed the frame. I scrutinize every detail. I monitor my front door. I wait, praying for stillness, yet anticipating intrusion with near certainty. There is no one to call who would lend credence to this nightmare. I am ensnared in this bizarre vigil, attuned to every whisper of sound, every dance of shadow on the walls. My eyes sting with fatigue, yet blinking feels like a dangerous concession. And with every involuntary flicker of my eyelids, the dread surges that when I look again, the figure from the photograph will be standing right before me. That Tuesday dawned ordinary, but the mansion swallowed the morning light whole. I, Elias Thorne, crossed its threshold expecting routine. A consultation, a cursory assessment of venerable woodwork for a caretaker named Finch. Dry rot, hinge fatigue, a swift report, the familiar litany of 100 prior restorations. Yet the air within lay heavy, stagnant, thick with the silence of decades undisturbed. A palpable stillness pressed in, tightening the weave of my coat across my shoulders. Floorboards groaned beneath my weight, each step a punctuation mark in the oppressive quiet. I recall mopping a bead of sweat from my brow, the corridor stretching before me like a throat. Finch, gaunt as a winter tree and rigidly upright, materialized from the gloom. He conducted me wordlessly towards a secondary passage, deep within the house's labyrinthine heart. There they stood, 3 sentinels of timber, immense and profoundly old. Their surfaces, the color of bruised oak, bore the patina of ages. Long iron hinges wept rust like slow tears. My fingers, tracing the grain, registered an unexpected coldness, a subtle, granular resistance. Finch volunteered they were relics, centuries old perhaps. My task, discern their potential for salvation, or condemn them to replacement. Leaning into the first door, I commenced the ritual. Kneeling, my fingertips skimmed the lower edge, probing for the insidious telltale signs of decay or infestation. A gentle tap against a panel yielded a hollow, resonant sigh. Nothing catastrophic, merely the superficial scars of time. Notes were scribbled into my pocket ledger. Behind me, Finch shifted, his impatience a subtle vibration in the stagnant air. My focus, however, remained tethered to the wood. Then, near the door's center, my eye snagged on an anomaly. A line barely corporeal, ghost-thin, an engraving so faint it nearly evaded sight. I drew closer, eyes narrowed against the dim light, my fingertip tracing the delicate contours. A single word, it seemed, inscribed in an ethereal script. The carving was shallow, elusive. Tilting my head, I sought purchase from the overhead bulb's weak luminescence. Finch's query, found something, was met with a raised hand, a silent plea for patience. The word felt alien, its orthography unnatural. I mouthed it silently, then, compelled by an obscure impulse, voiced it softly aloud. A breath, sharp and sibilant, whispered past my ear. The fine hairs on my arms lifted in unison. A reflexive glance over my shoulder revealed only the empty corridor. Finch, a distant statue 10 feet removed. A constriction seized my chest, sudden and frigid as plunging into icy water. Imagination, I reasoned, a stray draft whistling through the ancient house's bones. Returning my gaze to the door, disorientation struck. The engraving, it had altered. The letters seemed to have flowed, resettled into a new configuration. My eyes widened. Surely not. Leaning in again, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, I confirmed the impossible. It wasn't the same inscription. My palms grew damp. I wiped one absently on my trousers. Finch's voice, laced with faint concern. "Everything quite all right, Mr. Thorne." A curt nod was my only reply, unwilling to voice the absurdity taking root in my mind. "Just need a moment longer," I managed. With a gesture, I indicated a need for solitude. Finch, after a brief, unreadable glance, retreated further down the hall, ostensibly absorbed by his phone. Taking a steadying breath, I focused on the transmuted word, and, summoning my resolve, pronounced the new sequence aloud. Again, the whisper. This time it felt less intimate, more pervasive, a rustle that traversed the length of the corridor, brushing the nape of my neck with spectral coolness. My hand trembled visibly. I gripped the notepad tighter, and the word on the door shifted once more, fluid as ink on water. A frantic pulse throbbed in my temples. My jaw clenched. Questions swarmed, finding no purchase. Decades spent coaxing life back into antiques had presented oddities, but never this unsettling sentience. Tentatively, I laid my palm flat against the timber. A distinct tingling, a low electric hum, vibrated through my skin. I recoiled, startled. Finch remained oblivious, lost in his own world down the hall. "Maintain professionalism," I told myself. "Proceed with the inspection." I moved to the second door. Similar design, identical ironwork bleeding corrosion. Edges, hinges, panels. The examination proceeded methodically. The wood felt sound, remarkably preserved. And then, near the upper edge, requiring me to stretch, another inscription materialized from the grain. Different characters this time. With mounting trepidation, I read them aloud. Instantly, the familiar susurrus swept past, closer now, tickling my earlobe. I stumbled back, colliding with a small, dust-laden console table. Finch shot me a questioning look. I waved dismissively. Tension coiled in my muscles, my mouth parched. The doors weren't inert. They were responding, reacting to the vibration of my voice. Sweat pricked my temples. Denial was no longer sustainable. Each utterance provoked something. The sound was unnatural, the glyphs mutable. A desperate curiosity warred with a primal urge to flee. This was a restoration assessment, not an exorcism. A swig of water from my flask did little to soothe the dryness. I traced the second door's carving again, a feather-light touch. Where my fingertip pressed, the wood yielded, a shallow groove appearing as if scored into soft flesh. The image was unnerving. I snatched my hand back, staring. Hesitantly, I touched another spot. The same violation occurred. The timber puckered, bruised beneath my touch. My heart pounded violently. Restlessness seized my legs, a desperate need to pace constrained by the narrow confines. Turning to Finch, I announced my intention to examine the third door, situated at the corridor's terminus beside a large grime-streaked window that filtered the daylight into murky shafts. He offered a non-committal nod. This door possessed a stark, rectangular metal handle. Crouching, I played my flashlight beam along the seams, my fingers exploring the surface with heightened sensitivity. I anticipated another spectral word. Moments later, adjacent to the handle, I found it. The same exquisitely fine, shallow script. A pause, a breath held, then I read it, my voice scarcely louder than the ambient hum. The presence returned immediately. Finch seemed deaf to it, but I heard a faint exhalation, perhaps a low thrum that pulsed through the hallway air. He remained engrossed in his device. My forehead felt clammy, a cold sweat despite the inner heat. Predictably, the letters on the third door writhed into a new form. My hand closed over the handle. It felt unnaturally cold, almost glacial. The tingling intensified. I tested the handle, locked solid. Pressing my palm flat against the wood provoked the familiar electric buzz, stronger this time, racing up my arm. I jerked away. Seconds later, A fresh mark bloomed on the surface, a thin scratch mirroring the outline of my hand. Nausea churned in my stomach. The air felt thin. Retreating to the first door, I sought confirmation. The altered word remained. This time, I withheld my voice. Reaching out with deliberate care, I touched the edge of the engraving. Instantly, the wood dimpled inward, a small indentation marring the ancient surface. A faint creak accompanied the deformation. Finch, alerted by the sound, called out, "All well?" My voice, when I found it, trembled slightly. "Yes, fine." I feigned intense scrutiny, scribbling meaningless figures in my notepad, pretending to measure wood density. Answers were needed. I beckoned Finch over. Had anyone else interacted with these doors recently? Were there historical accounts, legends? He offered a shrug, a gesture of profound indifference or ignorance. Previous owners had tinkered elsewhere in the mansion, he conceded, but these doors remained untouched. Vague mentions of peculiar noises in this wing existed, dismissed as drafts or old house settling. Nothing concrete. A lump formed in my throat. Thanking him, I requested privacy to concentrate. He regarded me with a flicker of curiosity before acquiescing, retreating towards the main hall. Alone again. The silence pressed harder now, punctuated only by my shallow breaths. My gaze darted between the 3 enigmatic portals. Returning to the second door, I examined the fresh groove, undeniably new, tracing the exact path of my finger. The impulse to abandon the inspection, to fabricate findings and flee, was potent, yet the mystery held me captive. I produced a small magnifying glass, scrutinizing the carvings. The surrounding wood was immaculate, no rot, no borers. The inscriptions themselves were impossibly precise, too fine for any conventional tool. Stepping back, I took a deep breath and read the second door's current inscription aloud once more, enunciating clearly. The whisper coiled around me instantly, a vortex of sound in the narrow space. My heart hammered, breath hitched in my throat. I clenched my fists, knuckles tingling fiercely. Leaning against the cool plaster wall for support, I scanned the corridor. Emptiness. Only the oppressive silence answered. Turning back, I saw the letters had morphed again, the carving seemingly deeper now, branded into the oak. I backed away slowly, towards the grimy window by the third door, trying to impose order on my racing thoughts. Finch remained a distant figure in the main hall, his back to me. My pulse refused to settle. Deep breaths. Listen. Only my own respiration, the faint buzz of the overhead light. A trickle of sweat traced a path down my temple. Every nerve felt exposed, attuned to the slightest creak, the faintest shift in the stagnant air. Minutes crawled by. Enough. This enigma wouldn't yield its secrets today. Returning to the first door one last time, I brushed my hand across its surface, a tentative caress. As expected, the wood rippled beneath my touch, leaving another faint scar. My stomach clenched. Escape. Now. I strode down the corridor towards Finch, announcing the conclusion of my preliminary assessment. A report would follow. He observed my pallor, asking if I felt unwell. Fatigue. I lied. As he escorted me towards the grand entrance, my gaze kept straying back, irresistibly drawn to those 3 silent doors. A persistent, low-level hum vibrated under my skin, a phantom echo of their touch. My fingers trembled intermittently. Finch pulled open the heavy front door, releasing me into the sudden clarity of daylight. The fresh air was a balm. "I'll be in touch," I promised, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. The resonant thud of the bolt sliding home behind me felt unnervingly final. Standing by my car, fumbling the keys with shaking hands, I stared back at the brooding edifice. What unseen currents had I disturbed? The meaning of the engravings, the mechanism of their strange vitality, remained utterly obscure, but the experience was seared into my senses. The whispers, the mutable script, the wood yielding like living tissue, the tingling persisted, a physical memory. I started the engine, the mundane growl a stark contrast to the mansion's profound silence. Driving away, I knew forgetting was impossible. Some part of me felt marked by those doors, and a cold certainty settled in my gut. The doors, in their inscrutable way, had marked me too. Mirrors, I'd always thought, were simple things: glass, silvering, a frame, until one arrived that bled strangeness into the mundane fabric of my life, making me doubt the very testimony of my eyes. Its arrival remains etched in memory. The sheer weight of the Baroque monstrosity, the way it commanded the space in my modest living room, its wooden frame a riot of swirling, intricate carvings. My fingers traced the undulations, the rough grain beneath the dark finish, a tactile map of someone else's history. Impressive, undeniably. And so, I elected to hang it in the hallway. That decision, innocuous as it seemed, became the hinge upon which my reality began to creak. My name is Elias. 38 years have weathered me. By trade, I navigate the labyrinthine world of insurance claims. For 5 solitary years, this 2-bedroom house has been my anchor. Antiques held little allure for me, yet this mirror arrived courtesy of a departed older cousin, a man bereft of children, who'd often quipped I'd inherit his most peculiar treasures. I dismissed it initially, hauled it inside, assessed the aged metal hooks on its sturdy back, scratched, worn, and noted the unblemished sheen of the reflective surface. A handsome piece, I concluded, destined to lend a touch of borrowed light to my narrow hallway. For a week, normalcy reigned. Each morning, en route to the office grind, I passed it. A fleeting glance at my reflection, nothing more. Dust gathered. I wiped it away, admiring the sculpted leaves and serpentine lines in the deep, glossy wood. Morning sun striking the varnish would ignite tiny, fugitive sparkles, like gold dust trapped within the lacquer. I cinched the screws holding the hooks, ensuring its stability, then resumed the predictable rhythm of my days. The 8th day, however, brought a subtle dissonance. I recall returning home, the day's heat clinging to my shirt, my car's air conditioning having surrendered hours earlier. Keys clattered onto the small entryway table. The hallway lay steeped in afternoon shadow, the mirror a dark rectangle within it. A casual glance towards my reflection sent an unexpected clench through my gut. My face stared back, familiar yet alien. The left eye in the glass lagged, a fractional hesitation, a temporal stutter behind my own movement. Blinking rapidly, I blamed fatigue. Leaning closer dissolved the illusion. Normalcy snapped back into place. My palm pressed against a suddenly damp forehead. Dehydration, surely. I turned away, forcing the incident from my mind. Sleep became elusive a few nights later. Restlessness propelled me through the living room, checking phantom emails, flicking through silent television channels. Around the desolate hour of 1, thirst drove me towards the kitchen. The hallway light remained off, bathing the passage in profound darkness. As I passed the mirror, I halted, a sound, faint yet distinct, tapping. It seemed to emanate from within the glass, from some impossible space beyond the silvering. Flicking on the light, I confronted the smooth surface. No fissures, no flaws. My own knuckle rapping against it produced a flat echo, dissimilar to the delicate percussion I'd heard. I leaned in, scrutinizing my reflection. It appeared ordinary until its lips, my reflection's lips, twitched, forming a silent, unsettling O, though my own mouth remained perfectly still. A glacial chill traced my spine. I recoiled, my back thudding against the opposite wall. Seconds stretched, measured by the frantic hammering in my chest. Late night. Tired eyes. The rationalizations felt thin. I extinguished the light, fetched my water, drank it down in hurried gulps, and retreated to bed. Sleep, when it finally came after long turmoil, was shallow and troubled. Morning light brought a semblance of logic. Determined, I strode into the hallway, planting myself directly before the mirror. For a full minute, I subjected my reflection to scrutiny. Arms raised, head tilted, eyes blinked. A deliberate pantomime. Every motion found its perfect, instantaneous twin. Nothing. A sliver of relief. I resolved to phone a friend, to voice the absurdity, but the day swallowed the intention whole. Work cascaded, deadlines loomed, and the mirror's strangeness receded. Perhaps 3 days later, the urge to clean descended. Dust had again softened the mirror's sharp reflection. Armed with a rag and cleaner, I began to wipe. An odor immediately registered. Stale, reminiscent of decaying paper in damp cellars. Peering behind the frame revealed only dust bunnies and tentative cobwebs, nothing to account for the persistent mustiness that wrinkled my nose. As my cloth swept across the glass, a low vibration hummed through my hand, subtle as a distant engine. I paused, rag suspended, listening intently. The source remained elusive, the hum ceasing the moment I stepped back. Move on forward again yielded nothing. Unease settled in my stomach as I finished cleaning, a low-grade anxiety that shadowed me for the remainder of the day, pulling my gaze towards the hallway whenever I passed. That evening, takeout container balanced on my lap, I sought refuge in television. Tension knotted my shoulders. I stretched, trying to coax relaxation into tight muscles. Silence enveloped the house, save for the flickering screen. Pausing the show for a soda, I walked towards the kitchen. A peculiar luminescence emanated from the hallway. It took a moment to place it. The streetlight outside, its beam refracting off the mirror's surface at an unusual angle. Curious, I moved closer, checking the street for errant headlights. None. Just the steady sodium glare, somehow amplified by the glass, deepening the shadows on the hallway walls, lending them an unfamiliar geometry. Stepping fully before the mirror, my stomach plummeted. A phantom coldness enveloped me, raising the hairs on my arms. My reflection stared back, but behind it, hovering in the silvered depths, stood something else. A figure, solid, yet impossible, for the hallway behind me was empty. I spun around. Vacant space met my eyes. Turning back, the figure remained steadfast in the mirror, positioned just behind my reflected self. It appeared male, clad in archaic attire, posture rigid, eyes fixed intently upon my reflection's face. My mouth opened, a silent gasp. Then, like smoke dissipating, the figure dissolved. Gone. Yet the chill lingered, profound and invasive. My heart hammered against my ribs with a force that threatened consciousness. I stumbled back into the living room, breath coming in ragged bursts, hands trembling uncontrollably. The thought of calling someone surfaced, only to be smothered by the sheer idiocy of explaining a spectral visitor in a looking glass. I simply stood there, waiting for the frantic rhythm in my chest to subside. Avoidance became my strategy. The side door became my egress for work. The hallway light switch remained untouched. I cultivated a willful blindness, pretending the mirror wasn't there, an unsustainable charade. After a week of this self-imposed exile, paranoia gnawing at the edges of reason, I resolved to confront it. One night, near midnight's threshold, I crept into the hallway, flooded it with electric light, and met the mirror's gaze. For several seconds, my reflection remained placidly obedient. I forced myself through a repertoire of movements. Arms up, down, a tentative wave. Perfect synchronicity. Relief began its tentative bloom. Perhaps it had all been exhaustion, suggestion. Leaning closer, peering into my own reflected eyes, seeking final reassurance. Then, defying physics and sanity, the head in the mirror pivoted slightly to the left. A slow, deliberate turn my own neck refused to mimic. My breath hitched. The reflection's eyes blinked independently. Its right hand gave a spastic twitch. I scrambled backward, shoulders hitting the wall. I watched, mesmerized with horror, as its mouth worked, shaping silent words. My tongue felt like sandpaper. My legs trembled. Sliding along the wall, eyes locked on the glass, I fumbled for the switch. Darkness plunged the hallway into blindness, but not silence. Faint, amorphous shapes writhed on the mirror's now dark surface. A soft rustling arose, like footsteps on thick carpet, its origin maddeningly ambiguous. The mirror? The house? My own pulse roared in my ears. I fled to my bedroom, slammed the door, twisted the lock. Sitting on the edge of the bed, gulping air, forehead slick with cold sweat, throat constricted, I listened. The house settled into silence after a minute or two. Sleep was a distant country I couldn't reach. Dawn found me hollowed out, bones aching from a night spent rigid with fear, eyes burning. I called in sick. The morning bled away in the kitchen, fueled by coffee and restless pacing. Around noon, clutching my phone, ready to capture proof, I ventured back towards the hallway. Sunlight streamed through the window at the corridor's end, illuminating dancing dust motes. The mirror looked inert, just wood and glass. Standing before it, I activated the camera, recording myself or speaking, waving, shifting side to side. Everything normal. I stopped, played it back. Perfect mimicry. No lag, no phantoms. A sigh escaped me, carrying a measure of relief, though a deeper disquiet remained coiled within. That night, a scratching sound pulled me from a shallow sleep. Soft, yet persistent, like a fingernail drawn lightly, endlessly, across wood. It came from the hallway. My heart rate surged. Slipping out of bed, flashlight in hand, I eased open the bedroom door. Darkness. Tiptoeing towards the mirror, the scratching intensified. I flicked on the flashlight beam, aiming it at the glass. Faint, hairline scratches seemed to mar the reflection, originating from nowhere visible. as if something behind the glass were etching its way out. My hand shook, the flashlight beam jittering. Then a whisper, sibilant and indecipherable, brushed against my hearing, intimate as a secret breathed against the ear. My chest seized, my mouth went dry. Immobility claimed me for a long moment. Then, abrupt silence. The scratching ceased. I stared into the unresponsive darkness of the glass, breath held captive, before retreating silently to the locked sanctuary of my room where... The following morning, I telephoned a local antiquarian, a Mr. Abernathy. I explained I'd inherited a Baroque mirror, curious about its provenance and value, carefully omitting any mention of its unsettling behavior. He arrived that afternoon, a man in his late 50s, clad in a slightly dusty jacket, wielding a small penlight. He approached the mirror with professional reverence, examining the carvings, noting the craftsmanship. Likely 18th century, he mused, possibly earlier. Had I noticed any drafts near it? He inquired. Any warping? Older pieces sometimes concealed hidden compartments. I shook my head. He tapped the frame, then the glass itself. The mirror plate, he suspected, might be a later replacement. The backing seemed incongruous with the frame's apparent age. He left his card, deeming it a unique artifact, requiring further research for accurate valuation. I thanked him, ushered him out. Throughout his visit, the mirror remained perfectly behaved. Relief warred with a frustrating sense of invalidation. I craved proof, some external confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. That night, steeling myself, I decided to try recording again, hoping for definitive evidence. Every hallway light blazed. Phone camera rolling, I stood sentinel before the glass. Minutes ticked by. My reflection remained stubbornly faithful. I stopped the recording, started anew. Nothing. Anxiety began to ebb. Perhaps light was the key. I extinguished the overheads, plunging the hall into near darkness, relying only on the phone's flashlight beam aimed at the glass. The cone of light illuminated my reflection. Pale face, shadowed eyes. Then movement flickered at the periphery within the mirror. I swung the light. For a fleeting, heart-stopping second, the outline of a woman's face materialized. Hooded or shawled, eyes wide with terror or madness, mouth agape in a silent scream. She vanished before my mind could fully process the image. A wave of intense nausea washed over me. I scrambled away, phone nearly slipping from my grasp, the recording forgotten in the sudden, visceral panic. Certainty crystallized then. Something, or somethings, resided within that mirror, trapped yet terribly aware. Passing it became an ordeal. I felt unseen eyes track my movement, sensed the whisper of shallow breaths against my skin. Fleeting glimpses became more frequent, faces ancient and weary, visages from forgotten eras flickering at the edge of sight. They offered no words, only those soft, sibilant whispers that seemed to coil in the air. My body's response became involuntary. Crawling skin, constricted breathing, a dull, throbbing headache born of constant tension. Sleep migrated to the living room sofa. Proximity to the hallway became unbearable. The mirror remains. The impulse to drag it outside, to shatter its deceptive surface, wars with a paralyzing fear of unleashing whatever lies within. Instead, I've shrouded it. A heavy bedsheet, thick and opaque, is pinned fastidiously around the frame. Now, passing by, I see only the muffled contours beneath the fabric. Yet I feel it, a subtle pressure emanating from within. a silent insistence urging me to unveil it. I resist. The hallway is quieter, yes, but not entirely silent. Sometimes, a muffled susurrus leaks from beneath the cloth, fading if I strain to hear. How long can this fragile truce hold? The pressure mounts with each passage. Sweat prickles my palms. My heart quickens whenever I draw near. Dreams plague me. The sheet slipping away, the mirror's surface pulsing with a cold internal light in the darkness. This cannot end well. Few know my predicament. Researching online feels like inviting further terror. I keep the mirror, trapped by the fear of condemning another to its influence. Yet this existence is untenable. Courage, were it mine, would see it smashed to glittering shards. But the dread of consequence stays my hand. And so, this is my story. This is the legacy of the inherited glass. All that remains is avoidance, the daily struggle for normalcy, and the gnawing hope that the reflections on the other side never, ever break free. The bitter perfume of incinerated rubber stung the air, tendrils of smoke coiling from beneath my car's bonnet like malevolent spirits. Momentum bled away until I drifted onto the gravel shoulder of this forsaken country road, the engine uttering a final, sputtering gasp before silence descended. My own heart plummeted with it. Sunset bled across the heavens, a breathtaking canvas of molten gold and bruised plum, yet its artistry was lost on me. Stranded, utterly, terrifyingly stranded, miles adrift from any town, the phone in my hand displaying only mocking emptiness. No signal. Hope, that persistent fool, nudged me to lift the hood. Steam hissed a venomous welcome. Before me lay an indecipherable tangle of hoses and wires, a metallic labyrinth far beyond my meager understanding. I am no conjurer of mechanics. Even possessed of such skills, I lacked the necessary wands and charms, the tools. A frustrated slam echoed as the hood fell shut. Leaning against the cooling metal, I scanned the panorama. Boundless fields of wheat, gilded by the dying light, swayed in the evening sigh of wind. Far off, a solitary farmhouse punctuated the horizon, a pinprick of light gleaming weakly in a window. My solitary beacon, perhaps my only chance. As I weighed the daunting prospect of walking against the thin hope of a passing vehicle, a low rumble vibrated through the asphalt. Relief surged, potent and sudden. An old pickup truck, weathered and sturdy, materialized from the twilight, slowing as it drew near. The driver, a man whose face bore the cartography of years and sun, possessed eyes that seemed, initially, kind. He lowered his window. "Bit of bother with the motor?" His voice, rough like stones tumbled in a creek, held a friendly cadence. A grateful nod. "Yes, it just gave up. I don't suppose you're versed in the mysteries under the hood." A chuckle rumbled in his chest as he shook his head. "Afraid not, lass, but town's not too far. Happy to give you a lift. There's a fellow there runs the garage, likely sort you out." A tremor of caution ran through me. Every cautionary tale whispered against accepting rides from strangers, especially here, swallowed by silence and distance. Yet, as the final sliver of sun dipped below the earth, leaving the world to the deepening blues, options dwindled to none. "That would be incredibly helpful, thank you," I managed, striving to banish the quiver from my voice. A smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. He leaned across, pushing the passenger door open. "Climb aboard. Silas, folks call me." "Ilara," I offered, sliding onto the bench seat. The cab held a peculiar, not entirely unpleasant, blend of stale tobacco and pine-scented air freshener. Silas engaged the gears, and the truck lurched forward, swallowing the darkening road. My hand hovered near the door handle, a silent promise of flight. Yet Silas spun a yarn of easy conversation, tales of his acreage, his grandchildren's impending visit, a humorous anecdote about his own truck failing him miles from civilization, forcing an overnight trek. Against my better judgment, the tension in my shoulders eased slightly. I even offered a weak laugh at one of his homespun jokes. But unease, once planted, sends out insidious roots. We had traveled for what felt like a significant stretch, certainly half an hour, yet no glimmer of town lights appeared, no reassuring signposts. The open fields had dissolved, replaced by looming dense forest. The road narrowed, twisting like a serpent into the shadows. Silas," I began, the tremor now undeniable in my throat. "Are you quite certain this leads to town?" He cast a sideways glance, his expression obscured in the faint glow of the dashboard instruments. "Oh, no need to fret. Just taking a wee shortcut. Shaves off a bit of time." Alarm bells, silent moments ago, now clamored violently in my skull. Images flashed, headlines, podcast warnings, stories of women vanished after trusting seemingly benign strangers. "Actually," I forced the words past a suddenly parched throat, "I think I'd rather return to my car. I can just wait there, for a tow." His grip on the steering wheel visibly tightened, knuckles bleaching white beneath weathered skin. Now, he cautioned, the affable tone evaporating like mist. "No sense getting agitated. We're nearly upon it." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat fueled by adrenaline. My fingers darted towards the door handle, poised to leap regardless of the truck's considerable speed. Precisely as my fingertips brushed the cold metal, Silas slammed the brakes. The pickup fishtailed, screeching to a halt, throwing me forward against the restraint of the seatbelt. Before I could even gasp, his arm shot across, the lock clicking with ominous finality. "Regret this has to happen," he stated, his voice unnervingly level. "But I can't have you leaving, not just yet." Raw panic seized me. I scrabbled at the door lock, a desperate prisoner, but Silas seized my wrists, his grip like unyielding iron bands. "Stop your struggling," he growled, the sound low and dangerous. "Only makes it harder on yourself." A scream tore from my throat, swallowed instantly by the vast, indifferent forest surrounding us. Miles from anywhere, encased in darkness and silence. He restarted the engine, guiding the truck deeper, away from any semblance of a known road, further into the suffocating woods. I sat rigid, frozen by terror, my mind a maelstrom of horrifying possibilities. After an eternity compressed into minutes, we lurched to a stop before a small, dilapidated cabin. The headlights painted a scene of decay, a sagging porch, timbers rotting, paint peeling like sunburnt skin. Silas exited, circling to my side. He wrenched the door open, seized my arm, and hauled me out. I tried to plant my feet, to resist, but his strength dwarfed mine. "Please," I sobbed, tears tracing hot paths down my cheeks. "Please don't. Let me go. I won't say a word, I promise." He ignored my pleas, as if I hadn't spoken, dragging me inexorably towards the cabin door. As we drew closer, a sound reached me that turned my blood to ice, muffled voices from within. Not just one, several. He thrust open the warped door, shoving me inside. I stumbled, collapsing onto the dusty floorboards. Lifting my head, my gaze swept the room, widening first in shock, then dawning, sickening comprehension. The cabin was crowded, men, women, a few children huddled together, their faces masks of the same terror that gripped me. And dominating the center of the room stood a man whose face I knew instantly from grainy news reports. The charismatic, chilling leader of a doomsday sect, vanished months prior. "Welcome," the leader purred, his voice a soft, menacing caress. "We have been anticipating your arrival." Silas moved to stand beside him, a loyal acolyte. "Brought another, just as you instructed." My eyes darted around the cramped space, my brain struggling to assemble the grotesque puzzle. These people weren't Silas's partners in crime. They were his harvest, his victims, ensnared just as I was. The leader began to speak, weaving a lunatic tapestry of imminent apocalypse, proclaiming us the chosen few, destined for survival. His words washed over me, unheard. My focus narrowed, scanning, searching desperately for an egress. And then I saw it, a small window near the cabin's rear wall, partially obscured by stacked crates. It seemed just large enough. While the leader droned his prophecies and Silas stood rapt, I began to inch backward, slowly, deliberately. The other captives watched, their eyes wide, reflecting a fragile alloy of fear and nascent hope. I reached the window, fingers trembling as they fumbled with the latch. Rusted tight, it wouldn't yield. A frantic glance back, leader and recruiter, lost in their zealous dialogue, oblivious. Summoning a surge of desperate strength born of sheer terror, I forced the latch. The shriek of protesting wood split the air. Everyone froze. "Stop her!" the leader roared, but the command came too late. I was already scrambling, halfway through the opening. Footsteps hammered the floorboards behind me as I tumbled awkwardly to the cool earth outside. I scrambled upright, plunging blindly into the embracing darkness of the forest. Branches lashed my face. Unseen roots tripped my frantic feet, but stopping was unthinkable. Shouts and the crashing sounds of pursuit echoed behind me. I ran, lungs searing, legs screaming, propelled solely by terror's fierce engine. How long I ran, I cannot say. Minutes blurred into an age. Eventually, the sounds of pursuit dwindled, absorbed by the nocturnal symphony of the woods. I slowed, gasping, breath tearing raggedly in my chest, lost, directionless, aware only of the imperative to keep moving, to put distance between myself and that nightmare cabin. As the first tentative fingers of dawn painted the eastern sky, filtering through the dense canopy, a sound reached me, beautiful, mundane, miraculous, the distant, steady rumble of traffic. Hope rekindled. I stumbled towards the sound, finally emerging, scratched and exhausted, onto the shoulder of a highway. A trucker, his face etched with concern, saw my disheveled state and pulled over immediately, his phone already dialing the authorities. Huddled in the warmth of his cab, waiting for the flashing lights that signaled rescue, the enormity of the night crashed down upon me. I shattered, consumed by uncontrollable sobbing. In the ensuing days, recounting the ordeal to impassive officers, grappling with the trauma, the full narrative emerged. Silas, the friendly farmer, had been systematically harvesting the vulnerable for the cult, preying on stranded travelers like myself. The authorities raided the cabin, liberating the other captives, apprehending Silas and the self-proclaimed prophet. Escape was my fortune, yet the ordeal etched itself permanently onto my soul. Caution became my constant companion, a heightened awareness of the shadows that can lurk behind a welcoming smile. But alongside the fear, a surprising discovery, a reservoir of strength within me, untapped until tested by fire. Now, the sight of a car stalled by the roadside evokes a complex turmoil, the ingrained instinct to help warring with the chilling memory of that night. I make the call, police, roadside assistance, unable to simply drive past, yet unwilling, ever again, to offer my own hand directly. Some lessons are learned the hardest way. The most helpful stranger can, sometimes, be the harbinger of deepest peril. From the instant our boots crossed the unseen threshold into Ethelgard, a chill deeper than the mountain air settled in my bones. Error, a profound misstep. Their grins stretched unnaturally taut, a mimicry of joy. Their greetings, a suffocating tide of fervor. And as twilight bled purple across the jagged peaks, the awful certainty crystallized. Egress might be a forgotten concept here. It began, as such ventures often do, with maps spread across worn floorboards and the shared dream of wilderness untamed. Silas, companion of countless trails, and we'd plotted this pilgrimage for seasons. Seasoned trekkers, both, perpetually yearning for the blank spaces on the map, the whispers of valleys inviolate. Rumors, fragmented and enticing, spoke of such a place nestled deep within these ranges, a sanctuary untouched by the relentless crawl of the modern age. We answered the call, departing under a crisp autumn dawn, packs laden, spirits high, provisioned for 7 days adrift from the known world. Days dissolved in a rhythm of breathtaking panoramas, the music of crystalline streams, a profound solitude that whispered we were Earth's final inheritors. Then, on the 4th rotation of the sun, the path dissolved into a suffocating density of ancient woods. Silas froze mid-stride, head cocked. "Leo, listen!" A pause, pregnant with the forest's usual symphony, leaf-fall sigh, avian chatter. Then, beneath it, ethereal yet distinct, ripples of laughter. Impossible. We exchanged bewildered glances, miles from any charted track or whispered landmark. Who else could possibly dwell in this isolation? Compelled, we shouldered through grasping thorns and tangled roots, drawn towards the inexplicable sound. Abruptly, the claustrophobic green yielded. We stood, breathless, on the lip of a hidden fold in the land. Below, nestled like a secret jewel, lay not ruins, but life. Ethelgard. Smoke curled from quaint chimneys, figures moved with purpose along its lanes. The unmistakable hum of community filled the air. "Maps lie," Silas breathed, awe warring with disbelief. "Or this place, it shouldn't exist." Even as we gaped, Figures below turned upward. Recognition sparked, followed by an unnerving, unified surge in our direction. Faces alight with incandescent welcome rushed the slope. "Guests!" cried the first to reach us, a stout man whose eyes glittered. Oh, blessed arrival, such a rarity. Before coherent thought could form, we were enveloped, drawn down into the heart of Ethelgard, a vortex of eager faces and insistent queries. From whence did we hail? By what miracle had we found their sanctuary? Were there more following? The community's patriarch, a man named Corbin, possessed of startling vigor beneath a crown of white hair, gently steered us towards his dwelling. "Weariness clings to you," he observed, his voice a soothing balm as he guided us into a timbered home, fragrant with wood smoke and herbs. "Rest now. Tonight, Ethelgard celebrates your coming with a banquet." Overwhelmed, Silas and I found ourselves seated, steaming bowls thrust gently into our hands. As we ate a rich, unfamiliar stew, Master Corbin recounted the village's genesis, generations past, seekers fleeing a dissonant world beyond the peaks. "Here," he declared, a quiet pride resonating, "we provide all our own needs." "An anthropologist's fever dream," whispered Silas, already captivated, launching volley after volley of questions about their customs. Yet a discordant note hummed beneath the surface for me. The villagers' effusiveness felt brittle, their smiles stretched like masks over something unreadable. As dusk deepened into true night, the promised feast erupted, music strange and lilting, dances both joyous and unsettlingly frenzied, food piled in staggering abundance, welcomed undeniably, excessively, but I felt unseen eyes measuring us, weighing our worth against some unknown scale. Late, sequestered in the room Corbin provided, the door latched tight. I turned to Silas, urgency tightening my throat. "Tomorrow," I hissed. "Dawn, we vanish." He regarded me as if I'd uttered blasphemy. "Leave? Leo, are you mad? This is monumental. We have to understand this place, document it." My attempts to articulate the pervasive wrongness, the feeling of being subtly caged, met only his impatient dismissal. "Paranoia, mate. Pure trail fatigue. These people are kindness itself." Sleep offered no refuge, only fragmented visions of rictus grins hiding needle teeth. Morning found us at the communal table. Casually, striving for nonchalance, I mentioned our need to resume our trek. The effect was instantaneous, chilling. "Depart?" Master Corbin echoed, his practiced smile flickering for the barest second. "But your journey here is barely begun. Surely Ethelgard merits a few more days of your esteemed company?" Before I could press, Silas interjected, his voice brimming with an unsettling eagerness. "We'd be honored, Master Corbin." My glare went unseen, or perhaps unheeded. Days blurred into a cycle of strained pleasantries and mounting dread. Every tentative mention of departure was deftly parried, deflected with invitations to witness another quaint custom, learn another local craft, always with the gentle insistence we must stay. Silas, tragically, was no ally. He plunged deeper into Ethelgard's embrace, mesmerized, participating in their routines with a fervor that began to estrange him from me. Disquieting details surfaced. Where were the village's adolescents, the bridge between childhood and age? Vague allusions to rites of passage, journeys undertaken, offered no real answers. And the nights were punctuated by sounds drifting from the encircling woods, rhythmic chanting that vibrated in the chest, sometimes sounds horribly akin to stifled cries, dismissed as windsong or the calls of nocturnal beasts. Then, inevitably, our meticulously packed rucksacks vanished. Misplaced, we were told soothingly. The trails out, Corbin explained with grave concern, were perilous now, requiring guidance. Guides who remained perpetually occupied elsewhere. My desperate pleas to Silas, attempts to shatter his delusion and reveal our gilded cage, fell on deaf ears. He was drifting away, absorbing their ways, his eyes taking on a distant sheen I no longer recognized. Sleep became an impossibility, a torment. One moonless night, driven by a frantic need for answers, I slipped from Corbin's house, a shadow moving through the sleeping village. Towards the forest's edge, where the darkness felt thickest, whispers beckoned. Stealthily, hugging the deepest gloom, I crept closer. A flicker of firelight revealed a hidden clearing. My breath hitched. Villagers stood assembled, Master Corbin presiding. At the clearing's heart rested a crude stone slab, an altar, and upon it, bile rose in my throat, a silent scream clawing its way up, a shape horribly still, human. Corbin's voice, low and resonant, carried through the night air. "The Ancient Ones thirst," he intoned. "Their favor demands tribute, but rejoice, for soon our cherished guests shall appease them. Their essence will purchase Ethelgard's bounty for another cycle." I recoiled, stumbling backward, the world tilting. Sacrifice. We weren't guests, we were offerings. Panic lent wings to my feet. Back through the silent lanes I flew, heart hammering against ribs like a trapped bird. Silas. I had to reach Silas, shatter his enchantment. I burst into our shared room, empty, his cot, undisturbed. Cold dread clamped around my soul. Had they taken him already? Was I too late? I tore through the village, a frantic ghost calling his name, into the indifferent dark. Rounding a corner, I collided bodily with Master Corbin. "My dear boy," he murmured, that placid, terrifying smile firmly in place. "Exploring so late?" "Silas!" The name ripped from me, ragged, trembling. "Where is he? What have you done?" Corbin's smile stretched, revealing more teeth than seemed natural. "Silas perceives the essential harmony now," he said, his voice soft as falling snow. "He has accepted the embrace of Ethelgard, as in time will you." Instinct screamed retreat. I spun, desperate for escape, only to find my way barred. Villagers materialized from the doorways, from the alleys, silent sentinels converging. "Hush now," Corbin soothed, the sound raising gooseflesh on my arms. "Such agitation is unnecessary. You belong to the family now, eternally." They closed in, a silent tide, and among them I saw him, Silas. His eyes held a terrifying vacancy. His smile was a hollow echo of the man I knew. Whatever ritual, whatever insidious process they employed, my friend was lost. I thrashed, fought with the strength of primal fear, but their hands were legion, their grip inexorable. As they began to drag me towards the woods, towards the flickering firelight and the waiting slab, the chanting swelled, a hypnotic drone promising oblivion. That chanting, growing louder, swallowing thought itself, is the edge of memory. How these words find form, whether ink on scavenged parchment or mere phantoms of a fracturing mind, remains obscure. Time flows strangely here, or perhaps not at all. Fragment surface, ritual movements under a bloated moon, the cloying sweetness of ceremonial drafts, a metallic tang lingering on the tongue. Am I yet within Ethelgard's suffocating embrace, woven into its grotesque tapestry? Or does this narrative flicker only in the final moments before darkness claims all? If these syllables somehow breach the valley's walls, if they reach eyes that can still see the horizon, then listen. Tread carefully where the wild places deepen. Some secrets yearn to remain undisturbed, guarded by smiles sharper than any briar. Should you ever find yourself in a hamlet too idyllic, where the welcome burns too bright and the grins stretch too wide, flee. Flee without hesitation or backward glance. For once Ethelgard enfolds you, its embrace is absolute and eternal. The night shift was never meant to unravel like this, spooling into threads of pure disquiet. Here I sit, Elias, perched atop this silent monolith, adrift in a sea of darkened corridors punctuated by the insistent buzz of fluorescent tubes. Usually, the nocturnal hours drape the office in tranquility, a stillness broken only by the vending machine's low hum from the break room or the air conditioner's monotonous drone. Music, piped directly into my ears, used to be my shield against drowsiness. But lately, the silence screams louder than any song, a taut wire of apprehension I daren't ignore. Blocking out the world feels like inviting blindness in a room full of unseen obstacles. It began subtly, perhaps a fortnight past. My fingers danced across the keyboard, composing an email, when peripheral motion snagged my attention. A flicker at the corridor's far reach. Just a silhouette, dark against darker, melting from one side of the passage to the other. A colleague working late, my mind supplied instantly, before recalling the empty rota. No one else should be here. The shape wore clothes of an older cut, faded, crowned by a hat that belonged to a different era. Utterly silent. For an instant, I blamed the notoriously fickle lighting, its strobing pulse playing tricks on tired eyes. The moment evaporated. I dismissed it, a phantom conjured by fatigue, and returned to the screen's glow. But the phantom returned. Nights later, the same apparition manifested. This time, certainty solidified. It was a man. His gait was slow, deliberate, culminating in an impossible feat. He dissolved. Through the solid wall at the corridor's terminus, my mouth turned to dust. Had I truly witnessed that? Rising on unsteady legs, I traversed the hallway, the echo of my own steps unnervingly loud. The wall stood impassive, cool and unyielding beneath my palm. No hidden panel, no seam, just plaster and paint separating this space from the vacant office suite beyond. Standing there, a peculiar coldness enveloped my arms, the air thickening, prickling the nape of my neck like static electricity. Retreating to my desk, rattled, I wrestled with logic, but the image was seared, indelible. Subsequently, each shift became a canvas for his fleeting appearances, always glimpsed askance, a peripheral disturbance. The same hat shadowed his unseen eyes. The same time-worn clothes clung to his frame, as if he were a photograph bleached by decades. A strange conviction grew within me. He wasn't merely wandering, he was leading. No words, no gestures, yet his trajectory, the way he navigated corners before vanishing, implied direction, an invitation. follow. My stomach would clench violently at each sighting, my heart launching a frantic assault against my ribs. Hesitation warred with a burgeoning, morbid curiosity that gained ground with every spectral encounter, pulling me a few involuntary steps in his wake before he'd dematerialize. Whispers from a daytime associate illuminated a potential destination, a floor sequestered years ago, 5 to be exact, due to cited structural infirmities. Condemned, inaccessible. The elevator refused its summons. The service stairs remained bolted against intrusion. Reasons varied: foundational cracks and exposed wiring. Some murmured. Cost-cutting measures. Others speculated. Regardless, it was forbidden territory. A connection sparked, unwelcome but insistent, linking the sealed level with the silent man. Instinct whispered that this forgotten space was his terminus, his intended rendezvous. Ignoring the pull became a nightly battle, increasingly difficult to win. One night, resolve hardened. Armed with a heavy-duty flashlight and the flimsy pretext of investigating faulty wiring, I ventured toward the corridor's haunted end. The rhythmic thudding in my ears was my own pulse. Here, the lights flickered with greater abandon. The paint surrendered in curling flakes, and the air hung heavy, damp, smelling of old paper and stagnant water. My footfalls resonated, each pause amplifying the silence as I scanned for him. Nothing. Reaching the dead end, I swept the flashlight's beam across the plaster, searching for anomalies. Nothing but wall. My hand rested against it, tracing the surface. A subtle unevenness, perhaps. A hairline fracture, concealed beneath layers of paint. Then, a sound. A soft, dry shuffle, directly behind me. I whirled, the flashlight beam trembling violently. There, momentarily pinned in the light, stood the man. Further down the hall this time, facing me. His head canted slightly, the hat brim obscuring his features in shadow. A gasp tore from my throat. My muscles coiled, primed for flight. He retreated a single step, not turning, but simply phasing backward through the wall to his left. Vanished. My heart hammered against my sternum. Stunned into immobility, I remained frozen for long moments before retreating hastily to the relative safety of my desk. Concentration shattered. The remaining hours bled away in a haze of hypervigilance, every creak from the ceiling above threatening to send me bolting from my chair. Sleep offered little refuge in the days that followed, haunted by the memory of his posture, not menacing, merely expectant. My nerves frayed, yet the allure of the forbidden floor intensified. Another colleague, queried about the building's past, offered little. Histories of shifting tenants, corporate consolidations, the structure's undeniable age. No tales of tragedy, no whispers of misfortune. Just old, scant comfort. A small digital camera became my companion on the next shift, mounted on a tripod, its lens trained unwaveringly on the haunted stretch of corridor. The first night yielded nothing. The second night's footage, however, revealed a fleeting, localized distortion precisely where he materialized, indistinct, yet enough to raise gooseflesh. On the third night, fueled by bitter coffee that left my hands shaking, I kept vigil. Around the nadir of the night, 3 a.m., he appeared, a slow, steady pace straight through the wall. This time, shoving aside the knot of fear tightening in my gut, I moved, shadowing him almost immediately. but the wall met my outstretched hand, solid, implacable. Knock-in produced only a dull thud, ordinary, except a faint, cool draft caressed my cheek, emanating from somewhere near the floor. Kneeling, I ran my fingers along the baseboard, discovering a minuscule gap, too small to see into but the source of the cold airflow. Prying it open seemed reckless, the fear too potent. I retreated, a new resolve forming. Find the building plans. Online archives yielded gold, an aged blueprint. It depicted a forgotten service passage, a narrow interstitial route connecting my corridor to the sealed floor above, likely for maintenance access decades ago, right where he always vanished, sweat beaded on my palms. If I truly wanted to follow, to understand, that hidden way was the key. My next shift, I came prepared, a small toolbox tucked into my bag, waiting until the deepest part of the night, when the building held its breath, save for the distant elevator's sigh and the electric current's thrum. I returned. Heart heavy, breath catching, I knelt by the wall. The screwdriver bit into the old plaster. It crumbled with surprising ease. A section of aged wood splintered, revealing a sliver of absolute darkness beyond. Just wide enough. A wave of nausea washed over me, the urge to seal it back up, to forget, almost overwhelming. But the question burned brighter. Squeezing through the opening felt like burrowing into the earth. Pitch blackness greeted me. My flashlight carved a cone of light through the suffocating dark, illuminating a cramped passage redolent of damp concrete. Rough walls brushed my shoulders. Pipes snaked overhead like metallic entrails. Claustrophobic. My heartbeat echoed thunderously in my ears. Dust motes danced in the beam, disturbed by my hesitant progress. Each step resonated with a hollow finality. The passage terminated at a rusted metal door. My hand, trembling, closed around the ice-cold handle. A twist, a groan of protesting hinges, and I stepped out onto the forbidden floor. The hallway mirrored the one below, yet felt ancient. Paint peeled in leprous sheets. Gaps yawned where tiles once lay. Light fixtures dangled precariously. Silence reigned, save for a faint rhythmic dripping somewhere distant. Vacant office doorways gaped like empty mouths, revealing rooms littered with broken furniture and scattered papers. My pulse surged, adrenaline warring with sheer terror. Slowly, carefully, I advanced, pausing, listening. A whisper of movement, a scuff of leather on grit, then a glimpse, him at the far end, turning a corner. My mouth was sandpaper, my lungs constricted. I forced my legs onward, the floor treacherous beneath my feet. Flashlight beam jittering, I rounded the corner he'd taken. An open doorway revealed what seemed a storage area, and inside, his back to me, stood the man. I crossed the threshold. The air here was frigid, thick with the musty odor of decaying cardboard. Decrepit file boxes slumped against the walls. He stood near a collapsed shelving unit, utterly still. In the oblique light, his visible skin possessed an unnatural pallor. My own breathing sounded ragged, loud in the stillness. One tentative step forward. His head inclined slightly, an almost imperceptible acknowledgement of my presence. My heart thudded violently. He took a step, not away but forward, merging with the wall behind the fallen shelves. A low, grating scrape echoed as he vanished, metal dragging on concrete. I lunged toward the spot. The wall bore a significant crack, revealing a section of fractured pipe within the cavity. Protruding from the rubble near the floor was a small shard of metal. Crouching, I grasped it, pulled. It resisted, then yielded with a chunk of falling plaster, exposing a hidden niche. Inside rested an old metal box. Hands shaking uncontrollably, I lifted it out, heavy, filmed with rust. Setting it down, I worked at the lid. It resisted, then sprang open with a piercing shriek. No dramatic revelation, just aged documents, brittle permits, and, tucked beneath, a faded photograph. The building, younger. The corridor, recognizable. And there, hovering at the frame's edge, partially obscured but unmistakable, the man in the hat. A chill, profound and invasive, radiated through my spine. I realized I was drenched in sweat, my shirt clinging, breath coming in shallow gasps. The document seemed mundane. Construction notes, signatures, mention of concealed passages for wiring. My flashlight flickered, its power waning. Pocketing the photograph, I hefted the box and fled. An overwhelming imperative to escape that floor propelled me. My legs felt like lead, each step jarring. Back through the derelict hall, through the groaning metal door, into the suffocating passage. I scrambled back through the gap into my own time, my own familiar corridor, breathing raggedly. The loose panel was hastily jammed back into place. I made straight for my desk, gulping water, hands still refusing to steady, heart still galloping. The silence felt different now, charged, expectant. I waited for him to reappear, but the building remained still. Eventually, the shift bled into dawn. I carried the box home, tucked under my arm. Later, examining the contents more closely, the technical jargon swam before my eyes. The mention of hidden passages resonated, but the photograph, that was the true anchor of my unease. The man, beside a crew of workers decades ago, his face shadowed, but the hat, the clothes, identical. A clammy coldness crept into my hands. I put the photo away. I still inhabit the night shift. Sometimes I find my gaze drifting involuntarily down that corridor, waiting. Other times, I anchor my focus fiercely to the monitor's glow. The image of him walking through walls is branded onto my consciousness. I haven't returned to the sealed floor, though the thought is a constant low hum beneath the surface of my duties. Is he still there, waiting? The box remains locked in a cabinet near my desk, an enigma I don't know how to solve. Even now, alone in the hushed expanse of the upper floor, I feel the temperature subtly drop without warning. The air grows heavy, my muscles tense. That final image in the storage room, his disappearance, the scraping sound, the rusted box, replays relentlessly. Why me? Why the box? A persistent nagging feeling remains, a sense of something vital missed. My focus fractures easily these nights. My eyes search the periphery for movement that isn't there. What comes next is uncertain. Part of me craves normalcy, the mundane rhythm of the job. Another, stronger part feels the pull of that hidden passage, the lure of the unanswered question. His presence lingers, an invisible weight. I don't know his identity or his purpose, but this much is certain. The conviction that I will see him again is absolute, and when I do, I doubt I'll possess the strength to resist following wherever he leads.